Grady can hear it, Lane can hear it. Okay.
Okay, ready, guys? Go.
Everybody listen.
He stared out at the endless sea. His life was boring now, since the enslavement of mankind. He lived on an island in the middle of the Pacific. Like a needle in a haystack, he was surrounded by enemy territory. The enemy did not know he was there, though, for no one knew of the island's existence. During the first signs of a takeover, he just left. Didn't tell a soul. He took with him all the technology in his home, including terabytes upon terabytes of information, including the banned films, Conan the Barbarian, and the Predator series. His days were boring, the same thing over and over again for the past 3 years. Pausing, Lane?
Lol.
Oh, okay. His days were boring now. Same thing over and over again for the past 3 years. He would get up at sunrise or 5 a.m., whichever came sooner. He would then run the island 5 or 6 times. See, the island would get smaller during high tide. So he would run the island 5 or 6 times during low tide, 7 or 8 if high tide. Then he would do an ungodly amount of push-ups, along with the rest of his rigorous workout. By this time, it would be 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning. He would then eat breakfast, usually consisting of meat or fish, some bread, and water. See, the meat came from a herd of deer on the island. It was a very careful balance to make sure that he didn't overhunt them. When the deer hid from him, he fished instead. The bread, you may ask, well, where did the bread come from? He lives on an island. He had planted a wheat field there on the garden, which came back every year, surprisingly. After he ate breakfast, he would check all of his life support systems, starting with his power generation system. See, before the fall of man, he was the leading scientist on the GP project, or Green Power Project. It was a project to create energy from photosynthesis. They were unsuccessful in the lab. But when he had landed on this island, he had done it. All on his own, without his team, without his equipment, he had done it. And now he had unlimited power. During the day, of course. At night, he ran off of batteries, which could only run his power system. But I digress. He would go through and check all of his power systems, make sure all of his food supplies were stocked. And by the end of this, it would be 5 or 6 p.m. And he would go home, eat what he didn't eat for breakfast, put on a movie, and go to sleep. As I said before, he had done this for years. He had kind of lost track. But one day, he thought it was Christmas, but he wasn't sure. He had lost track. He found a bottle on the beach. It was a glass bottle with a green plastic cap snapped onto it. The bottle had a piece of paper in it. He thought it was a note, but was unsure, for he was too afraid to open it. What could it be, he thought? He thought it could be anything. It could be a note saying that mankind had won their freedom and that he could come back. Or it could be from the enemy, and they could be trying to coerce him into coming back, for he was the last of his kind. Or maybe, even possibly, it could have been a naughty picture. He knew not what it was. He set it on his hut in his home and stared at it. He came to the conclusion that he should go on with his days and not dwell on the matter. But he still did. He would go through his days just like before, but rush through his days so he would be done around 4 or 5 instead of 6 or 7. And he would sit and stare at the bottle. And every night, he would cuddle with it and go to sleep like a forgotten lover. After about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks of this, he decided if this was some sort of important, urgent message, he would open it. He would open it and read it. But he was still afraid. He was walking through his hut to go grab something, a movie he thought, but he wasn't sure. His days were so messed up. He bumped the table, and the bottle hit a sharp rock and shattered. He saw the note laying there on the ground, and he thought, the bottle's open, I must read it now. So he picked up the note, and he thought it deserved enough respect that he would read it out loud. So he cleared his throat, something he hadn't done in years. Who would he talk to on this island all by himself? And he read it. His voice scared him at first because he hadn't heard it in so long. The paper felt old in his hands. He read it aloud. It said, Revelations 22, and the fall of man will be of fire. It continued, and he will lead us. And the river of life will lead them to me, and my right hand will be Judas. Amen. He read it over and over again, not making heads nor tails of it. He did not understand it. But he thought enough of it that he went and found another bottle in his home somewhere, put the note in it, or put the piece of paper in it, with another note that read, Dear womankind, I am on an island in the middle of the Pacific, 2 clicks away from many of your control towers. I escaped right before you enslaved the rest of men. If you would like to come and collect me, I am here and I will put up no fight. I have terabytes upon terabytes of information. Hope to see you soon, Freeman.
I think it's ironic that his name is Freeman.
No.
Yeah, it is. We're like, I'm like,
Not ironic, but it's kind of funny.
Anyone else
Okay.
got anything?
ready for it.
Oh. It's so much better on paper.
No, it's so much better.
It has
But,
potential.
I mean, if he reads it aloud from the paper, it's saying.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I have it written down on paper, and I left out a lot, and I added it.
It was from our fiction
What?
class.
Teleprompter.
Yeah, that's what I need, teleprompter.
Oh, there you go. That's good. Yes, honey.
No.
By the way, you are a win.
Maybe you're hungry. When the last time you ate was that
Great, you got a story or a talent?